the video cut off, and I'm not going to be able to hit the 10-minute window. Okay, anyway, again, this is why I kind of wanted to break these up so you guys didn't have to sit through this so long. We're going to bring that back by at least 1, so we're going to make that a 4. Now we're going to do 3, because like I said, it's going to be a 1 by 1 by 1. We're going to add a cube, and you'll notice now it's perfectly placed on that plane. Now I'm going to put that 3D cursor at the exact opposite at -3, and we're going to add another cube. So now we have 2 cubes. One thing to be very careful about, you can join pieces. Let me show you that real quick. And now they all work off of the same. We're going to go to face mode down here, and I can now manipulate them off of this plane. Again, I wouldn't do that not until you get everything in place. Oh, what did I do there? Okay, there we go. Okay, now my cubes are individual again. Until you have everything in place and sized off the way you want. Again, this is just a goofy looking block, but I just wanted to make something real simple. So, another thing we need to cover, and go ahead, and I'm going to export this real quick. Bloop, 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 bloop. Oh, I didn't leave that with the title, did I? Let's give that a title. I'll make this a little bit easier. Export FBX. And for now, if you guys are wanting to follow along, I'm going to call that Test Cube Trio. Just go down here and select 6.1 ASCII on your Blender. Select Mesh. Size that off at a 10 on the scale here, and then go ahead and hit tangent spaces. I'll go into further detail on how all that works and all the little things here in a little bit. Come back over here and go ahead and import that now. Test Cube Trio. Don't generate UV maps when you're importing. Just leave that off. Import all. That's about the only thing you really have to do. Yes, we know this is going to happen. We don't care. There's a reason that it's doing that. Go ahead. I'm going to delete that off. You can load up any file you want. The test one at the beginning. Whatever you want to do this. And there's our cube. Okay. Now you can kind of see how that works. Let's go here. You'll notice now, since I placed everything so squarely, it's all perfectly centered. And I'm going to change my layout here real quick because I've got a different 3D view I'm going to show you guys with. So we're going to go with Window, Viewports. Nope, not Viewports. Oh boy, where was it at? Layouts, here we go. I want a 3-window layout like so. There we go, that's what I wanted. Okay, so you can see the grid. You can see the front. Now you can see where the pivot point is. Now that you guys can see where that pivot point is, go back over into Blender. Select all 3 of the cubes. And let's just go ahead and move them up. Move them up until they visibly look like they're just about on that line. Kind of move your viewport around till you can just kind of see it. Okay, don't do it exact yet. Just kind of eyeball it the best you can. Go back to export. FBX is the one we're selecting. Leave all this. Should all be defaulted and set out right. I'm going to export it. Come back into the Unreal. We're going to re-import it. And what you do is just right-click it and hit re-import. That'll re-import it just with all the same stuff. Now you'll notice it's imported it into the game. And now that little pivot point, that's just what I'm going to call it. It's just a pivot point. I know there's a more accurate term, but we're just going to call that pivot point, that little pivot point. And you'll notice it looks like it's eyeballed pretty good. Now in this case, in this instance, I actually eyeballed it. Yours may, since you eyeballed it off and just moved it up by hand, may be a little bit more off. And I'm just going to go ahead and move it a little bit off. Actually, no, I'm not. I'm going to show you something here. let's say I import that and I want to make this bigger. And we're going to make it really big. I'm going to go ahead and make it 10, 10, 10. This is really huge, I know, but now that I've made it big, you can kind of see where the error is going to come into play here. You'll notice how, and you can just barely see it here, and I'm sure if I go ahead and make it even bigger, it's not quite on grid. Alright, so again, I've made this absolutely enormous. That's a big white cube, isn't it? Alright, let's zoom out, let's zoom in. Let's zoom in. That should make it just a little bit more apparent. Yeah, you can kind of see how it's starting to grow, and every time I make it bigger, it's going to grow a little bit more. This comes into really close play because it's just not going to quite overlap. You may end up putting two cubes on top of one another. And actually, in fact, if I were to take this cube, Control W to duplicate it, and I line it up, downsize that. Or attempt to line it up this way. I zoomed in. You'll see there's just a tiny bit of overlap. There's something weird going on here, and that's just because of the way it is. So if you're stacking stuff on top of one another, it's not going to look right. What you want to do, and you'll notice I did come pretty close to hitting it. You want to work off grid or on grid. You want this to all be flattened off where you want it. In my case, I think what I want to do is I want this corner here, and then I can kind of space everything off on that. So what I'm going to do in this case is I'm going to kind of eyeball it first. I'm going to go this way, and that's positive. I'm going to go that way, and that's a positive motion. I'm going to eyeball it. So now I know from looking that that's about a 1, and this is the tricky part. Blender won't do all of them at the same time, and that's about a 7. And that's indeed about a 1 over, let's see here, that's about a 4. Again, it doesn't move them all at once, so you have to kind of do this all yourself. And then this looks like it's 2 over y. That's 2 over y. And then that's 2 over y. So we're going to put that. Again, I can get it kind of close, but I can't get it quite perfect, which is not what we want. We want it perfect. We want it right on that line. And I'm just going to kind of corner that off so that corner's back here, kind of over here and floating in space, which actually I'm not liking. So I'm going to -1 that. And then I'm going to X that over by 2. And that's going to lock it there. And then I'm just going to do this. And I'm going to subtract 2 because I'm just moving them over 2. So now everything's locked onto that corner. You can go back and hit your export FBX, and all your options should still be there. Export it. And let's go back to Unreal, not that. Right click. Actually, let's first things first. Let's get rid of the silly scale on this that I did. Let's put that back at a 1 by 1 by 1. A little bit easier to see. We'll delete my extra 1. Okay, now I'm going to right click, and I'm going to re-import. I'm going to click OK. Now you'll notice it's all squared off nice and perfect. You'll also notice that the little arrows moved over. I can do that same thing a second time, and you guys are free to play with that and see how that works and kind of move it. Oh, there we go. And actually, I'm going to move this piece out into 3D space somewhere that's blank because it's kind of hard for you to see that top view. There we go. On how it is just perfectly on grid. And I can, if I want this point over here instead, I can just go in here and go, okay, this direction's positive, so if I just move it negative, or I move it over here, or over there, or if I want it in the square of that one up in the middle, up here, you can put it anywhere you want. You just got to make sure of where that origin, where that 0 point is in Blender. And that right there is pretty much everything. The only other thing that I have to cover for you is the cleaning your meshes up so they look nice and clean. I know I talked a little bit about it in my other tutorial, but I just wanted to touch base again. soon as I find it.